This is Dr. Supreet Kaur from Department of Commerce, University of Delhi. So we'll be continuing the series that is income under the head capital gains, and this will be our part 3. So as we were discussing about the exemptions that are available under the head capital gains, so we'll start with the section 54 because this is the first very exemption when we talk about different exemptions that are altogether available under the head capital gains. Now when we talk about capital gains, we have both sort of our capital gains, long term capital gains and our short term capital gains. So there are certain deductions, or you could say certain these exemptions which are available under your long term capital gains and your short term capital gains, right. So we'll start with the section 54, and this sort of exemption is available in case any individual or any Hindu undivided family, he sells out any house property, and by selling out any house property, in turn they are purchasing or constructing a new house property. So that means what? That in turn for a house property, you are either buying out a new property or you are constructing new property in India. Now this sort of benefit is available in case of your long term capital gains. That means what? For example, I have sold out any property of mine, right, that being a long term property of mine, and after selling out that property, what am I doing is I am utilizing the amount that I have generated from the sale consideration in order to purchase the next house property. So basically we say जब आप एक प्रॉपर्टी को बेचकर न्यू प्रॉपर्टी परचेज करते हैं, सो यू क्लेम एन एग्जाम्पशन अंडर सेक्शन 54. नाउ न्यू प्रॉपर्टी परचेज जो है आप इधर 1 year बिफोर ट्रांसफर कर सकते हैं या फिर विद इन 2 years आफ्टर ट्रांसफर. दैट मीन्स व्हाट? दैट मीन्स जिस साल आपने सेल करा उस साल सेल करने से पहले ही आपने एक प्रॉपर्टी को परचेज कर लिया, करेक्ट. या फिर आपने क्या करा, after the sale, when the sale has taken place, you have done what is after 2 years. That means within 2 years. For example, I have sold out a property in 2022. So either I will be able to, let's say, purchase another property either in 2021. So that will be 1 year before the transfer, or I could say it could be within 2 years after the transfer. That means अगर 2022 में मैंने सेल आउट करा है प्रॉपर्टी को, सो 22 से लेके 24 तक का टाइम पीरियड है कि मैं एक नई प्रॉपर्टी जो है परचेज आउट कर लूँ. इफ आई डू सो, राइट, दैट मीन्स एक हाउस प्रॉपर्टी को बेचकर दूसरी हाउस प्रॉपर्टी में परचेज कर रही हूँ, दैट मीन्स नाउ आई कैन अवेल एन एग्जाम्पशन अंडर सेक्शन 54, right. And second thing is, it's not limited to your purchase, you can also go for the construction of a property. That means what? That means कि जब आपने सेल करा, taking the same example, for example, let's say you are selling the property in 2022. Now, within 3 years after transfer, so अगर 2022 में आपने सेल करा है तो या ट्रांसफर करा है, जो हम टर्मिनोलॉजी यूज कर रहे हैं, सो उससे 3 साल तक यानी कि 2025 तक आपके पास टाइम पीरियड है कि अगर तब तक आप अपनी कंस्ट्रक्शन प्रॉपर्टी का कंप्लीट कर लेते हैं, देन दैट मीन्स यू आर एलिजिबल टू क्लेम एन एग्जाम्पशन अंडर सेक्शन 54, राइट. नाउ इट कैन ऑल्सो हैपन कि जब हम ये एग्जाम्पशन की बात कर रहे हैं या जो हमारा सेल कंसिडरेशन है उसकी बात कर रहे हैं, सो फॉर द टाइमिंग गवर्नमेंट एक आपको और स्कीम ऑफर करती है. एवरी बैंक अकाउंट इट ऑफर्स यू सच स्कीम दैट इन कि जितना भी आपका रेवेन्यू जनरेट हुआ है, सेल कंसिडरेशन जनरेट हुआ है फ्रॉम द सेल ऑफ अ हाउस प्रॉपर्टी, यू कैन सेव इट आउट इन द फॉर्म ऑफ अ कैपिटल गेन डिपॉजिट अकाउंट स्कीम. दैट मीन्स व्हाट? कि आपके बैंक अकाउंट्स में गवर्नमेंट की स्कीम ऑफर करती है कि आप एक कैपिटल गेन का डिपॉजिट, सिमिलर टू योर एफडीआर, दीज आर योर डिपॉजिट स्कीम्स, कि टेम्पररी जब तक आपने सपोज करो परचेज नहीं करा, क्योंकि आपके पास परचेज करने का टाइम पीरियड कितना है कि 2 साल तक आप परचेज कर सकते हो. फॉर एग्जाम्पल पहले 6 महीने आपने परचेज नहीं करा, या लेट्स से आपने पहले 1 साल में जो है परचेज नहीं करा ट्रांसफर करने के, राइट, यू परचेज इट अ लिटिल लेटर, बट लेट्स से विद इन दोज 2 years. सो फॉर द टेम्पररी टाइम बिंग, जब तक आपने परचेज नहीं करा, आप इस अमाउंट को, बिकॉज यूजुअली व्हेनेवर दीज sort of your sale happens for your property, so this is generally a big amount, so you can save it out in your these banks under your capital gain deposit account scheme, right. and later on when you will be buying out your property, you can utilize the same. So that is a sort of your temporary you could say the savings that you can put it up. Now another point कि हमें कितना exemption मिलेगा, कि अगर एक हाउस प्रॉपर्टी को आप सेल कर रहे हैं और उससे जो आपको कंसिडरेशन रिसीव हुआ है, राइट, और उससे मैं लेट्स से नेक्स्ट प्रॉपर्टी परचेज कर रही हूँ, तो मुझे बेनिफिट कितना मिलेगा या मुझे एग्जाम्पशन कितना मिलेगा, राइट. सो ये से द इन्वेस्टमेंट इनटू द न्यू एसेट, यानी कि जितने का आपने नेक्स्ट प्रॉपर्टी बाय आउट करा है उतना आपको जो है एग्जाम्पशन मिल सकता है, या फिर आपने जो प्रॉपर्टी सेल आउट करा है उससे जितना आपको कैपिटल गेन्स हुआ है, you could say the lower of the two, either the investment that you make it out to the next property, or you could say the capital gains that you generate from the sale of your the very first property. So whatever the amount being the lower one, that you can claim as an exemption from your capital gains. Now another point that is to be kept into mind with respect to, you could say, the validity, or you could say with respect to, in order to make sure that this benefit doesn't get withdrawn later on. So that says ki in case now you are acquiring a new property, that means now after the acquisition of the new property, you cannot transfer the property. After acquiring it, you cannot transfer the property within 3 years of its acquisition. That means if you do what is कि आपने एक हाउस प्रॉपर्टी बेचकर A, सेकेंड हाउस प्रॉपर्टी परचेज करिए B. नाउ इफ परचेज करने के 3 साल के अंदर ही आप ये हाउस प्रॉपर्टी नंबर B को सेल आउट कर देते हो, देन द सेक्शन सेज योर बेनिफिट विल गेट रिवोक्ड. दैट मीन्स जो एग्जाम्पशन आपको मिला है वो रिवर्स हो जाएगा, रिवोक हो जाएगा, बिकॉज सेक्शन का पॉइंट क्या है, टर्म्स क्या है, दैट यू आर सपोज टू कीप your property that you have acquired after selling out the previous property for a minimum of your 3 years, right, in case you want to avail the benefit of section 54, right. So that is about your section 54, which says whenever you sell out a house property and in turn you are purchasing or constructing a new house property, government will provide an exemption under your Income Tax Act 1961. Now another section in the queue for the exemption is your section 54B. Now similar to your section 54, this benefit is also available to, you could say, the individuals and the Hindu undivided family. So again the benefit is there into your long term and your short term capital gains. So the section 54B is available in both the scenarios. Now when we say you are sort of selling any long term or any short term capital asset, right, which you have been using for the agricultural purposes. For example, you are having an agricultural land, right before its transfer you were utilizing it only for the agricultural purposes, right, and later on after selling this agricultural land you are buying a new land, and that too an agricultural land. So that means जब आप एक एग्रीकल्चरल लैंड को सेल आउट करके सेकेंड जो प्रॉपर्टी परचेज कर रहे हैं वो भी एक एग्रीकल्चरल लैंड है, सो देन दिस सेक्शन applies. That is the section 54B, which says whenever you are utilizing any you could say agricultural land and then selling it off and later utilizing the amount to buy a new agricultural land, then you can avail the exemption which is available under section 54B. Now one important point that is to be kept into mind with respect to this section is when we are talking about this agricultural land, right, so remember it has to be used for the agricultural purposes only, and that too when you are supposingly you are transferring the property in, let's say, 2023. So that means during the 2 years which are prior to its transfer, that means from 21 to 22 and then from 22 to 23, for these 2 years you should specifically be utilizing the agricultural land for the agricultural purposes in order to make sure that you get the benefit under this particular section 54B. Now if you will not be abiding by the conditions that are being laid down under this section, then what will happen? Your benefits will get revoked. Similarly, it says, the another property that you are supposed to buy after selling, any agricultural land that you were utilizing. So you are supposed to only buy an agricultural land in turn only, and that too within 2 years. Similar thing is there कि आपने एक एग्रीकल्चरल लैंड को सेल आउट करके आपने इन टर्न सेकेंड एग्रीकल्चरल लैंड परचेज करा, राइट, वेरी बेसिक पॉइंट. एक लैंड को आपने बेचा और वो आपकी एग्रीकल्चरल लैंड थी, और उसे आप पिछले 2 सालों सेल करने से पहले के जो 2 साल हैं उसमें आप सिर्फ एग्रीकल्चर पर्पसेस के लिए यूज कर रहे थे, और आपने बेच के जब जो नई प्रॉपर्टी खरीदी है वो 2 साल के अंदर अंदर खरीदी है बेचने के, ठीक है, और जो परचेज करी है वो भी एक एग्रीकल्चरल लैंड है. सो देन दैट मीन्स यू आर क्वालिफाइड फॉर द एग्जाम्पशन अंडर सेक्शन 54B, राइट. नाउ आपको बेनिफिट कितना मिलेगा एग्जाम्पशन का? इट इज द सिमिलर एज वी यूज टू गेट इन सेक्शन 54. दैट मीन्स आपने जितना इन्वेस्टमेंट करा न्यू एग्रीकल्चरल लैंड में, या फिर आपको जितना कैपिटल गेन्स हुआ है बाय सेलिंग द एग्जिस्टिंग एग्रीकल्चरल लैंड, then the lower of the two will be claimed or can be claimed as an exemption, right? And in case, after buying out that property, the newer agricultural land, you are selling it within 3 years after its purchase, then again that revocation of the section or the exemption will happen, and that will do what? You will be not able to claim the exemption, rather you have to, again reverse the benefits that you have already taken, let's say in the previous year, right? Now, we have discussed about section 54 and 54B. The next being is our section 54D. Now, this section is available for every sort of your, taxpayer, right? Any taxpayer, be it your, let's say, Hindu undivided family, be it any individual, they can claim this benefit, this section 54D exemptions. But now the condition is what? That the land and building, now you are not selling, any, normal or, any house property, any residential house property. Now you are dealing into what? Any land or building that is forming part of an industrial undertaking, which has been acquired by the government and it is being used for 2 years prior to acquisition. And after selling out that, property, or due to that acquisition, whatever sale consideration you are receiving, you are utilizing that sale consideration in order to buy another land and building, which is again being used for the industrial purpose. Now, what is the, if I summarize this thing up, that means कोई भी आपकी लैंड और बिल्डिंग जो कि आप इंडस्ट्रियल पर्पसेस के लिए यूज कर रहे थे, राइट, and government ने क्या करा है, it has acquired that land and building which you were utilizing for industrial purposes from you because of, let's say, any scheme, land pooling scheme, right? Now, whatever consideration that you have been receiving from the government, because government has acquired your property, right, taken up your land and building, now you are utilizing that sale consideration again to buy another land and building which is to be, used for industrial purposes. If that being the case, you are eligible to claim the exemption under section 54D. Now, again, what will be the benefit of your exemption? It will be either whatever investment you are making into new land and building which are being used for industrial purposes, or the capital gains that you generated from the sale of the existing land and building that you were supposedly being using for industrial purposes. And another point, that is the revocation. So similarly, whenever you are going for purchase, you are supposed to keep it for 3 years. You are supposed to not to transfer the same within 3 years after purchase. If it is transferred, the benefit of the section, let's say 54 or 54B or 54D. So 3 of the sections we talked about, the benefit that was available will be withdrawn, it will be revoked, right? Now, next section in the series is our section 54EC, right? Now, here again the benefit is available to any taxpayer, right? This is with respect to any long-term capital asset. It could be a land, it could be a building. Now, earlier you have read about in section 54, when you are selling a house property, you were supposed to buy a new house property only. And then we talked about you were selling an agricultural land and then you are supposed to buy an agricultural land only in section 54B, right? Similarly in 54D, any land which were used for industrial purposes, and you were supposed to buy another land, that too for industrial purposes. Here we are talking about whatever asset you are selling, land, any long term capital asset, primarily land and building you are selling. But now after, let's say you are selling that land and building, you are not buying another land and building. You are rather doing what? You are taking up the shares of National Highway Authority of India और रूरल इलेक्ट्रिफिकेशन कॉर्पोरेशन के बॉन्ड्स अगर आप परचेज कर रहे हैं, सो देन यू कैन अवेल द बेनिफिट अंडर सेक्शन 54 EC. दैट मीन्स व्हाट कि अगर मेरी कोई लैंड एंड बिल्डिंग है, मैंने उसे सेल आउट करा है और उसको सेल करने के बाद व्हाट एम आई डूइंग, मैं सारा जो अपना पैसा है सेल कंसिडरेशन का उसको पुटअप कर रही हूँ कहाँ पर, रूरल इलेक्ट्रिफिकेशन कॉर्पोरेशन के बॉन्ड्स लेने में या NHAI के बॉन्ड्स परचेज करने में. बट अगेन यहाँ पर अपर कैपिंग है, you can only invest or take up the bonds for Rural Electrification Corporation or NHAI up to a maximum limit of 50 lakhs. That means आपका जितना भी सेल कंसिडरेशन रिसीव हुआ है, आप ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा कितने के बॉन्ड्स ले सकते हैं? 50 लाख रुपीस तक के बॉन्ड्स जो हैं आप परचेज कर सकते हैं. नाउ अगर हाउस प्रॉपर्टी का केस था तो हमने कहा था ठीक है, एक को सेल करने के बाद जो आप नेक्स्ट हाउस प्रॉपर्टी परचेज करेंगे, आपके पास 2 साल का टाइम पीरियड है कि आप परचेज कर लीजिए, राइट? या कंस्ट्रक्शन होगी तो आप कंस्ट्रक्शन के लिए 3 साल तक का टाइम पीरियड है. बट जब हम ये बॉन्ड्स परचेज करने की बात करते हैं, हमारा टाइम पीरियड कंपैरेटिवली बहुत रिड्यूस्ड होता है. हम ये कह रहे हैं कि जब आपने सेल करा, सेल करने के अगर 6 महीने के अंदर अंदर विद इन 6 months यू आर बाइंग दी रूरल इलेक्ट्रिफिकेशन बॉन्ड्स और नेशनल हाईवे अथॉरिटी के बॉन्ड्स, देन you are sort of qualified to avail the exemption under section 54 EC. बट 6 months के पीरियड के बियॉन्ड नहीं होना चाहिए. यानी कि अगर आज आपने सेल आउट करा है तो उस लैंड एंड बिल्डिंग को सेल आउट करने के 6 महीने के अंदर अंदर ही आपको ये बॉन्ड्स परचेज करने होंगे, एंड दैट टू विद एन अपर सीलिंग ऑफ योर 50 lakhs, राइट? नाउ what will be the benefit of exemption? Again, it will be onto the similar lines as we talked about in the previous sections. That is either the investment that you are making up into these bonds or the capital gains that you generated from that land and building that you sold it off, right? So whatever being the lower of the two can be availed as an exemption under section 54 EC. Now, another point of revocation. Again, if you were purchasing these bonds, you cannot transfer, you cannot sell away all these bonds up to period 5 years. So here the period gets extended for revocation. It says if you are selling off or transferring these bonds, right, within 5 years after the purchase, then the benefits available under section 54 EC will be revoked. That means you no longer can take that exemption. Rather, whatever exemptions you might have taken into the previous years, that will also get reversed. Now, when I say previous year, that means हमारे पास 5 साल तक का टाइम पीरियड है, राइट? कि आपको 5 साल तक उनको होल्ड करना है. फॉर एग्जाम्पल 2022 में मैंने एक प्रॉपर्टी को सेल आउट करा, राइट? लेट अस सपोज जनवरी. Now, I have a time period up till you could say the 6 months का period is there, तो जून तक का I have a time period कि मैं bonds purchase करूँ. Supposingly मैंने मई में जो है bonds purchase कर लिया 2022 में, right? Now, it says जो आपने मई 2022 में bonds purchase करे हैं, आप उसे अगले 5 सालों तक यानी कि 27 तक जो है मई तक आप इन बॉन्ड्स को जो है सेल आउट नहीं कर सकते. अगर आप उन्हें ट्रांसफर कर देते हैं, जिस भी ईयर में आप ट्रांसफर करेंगे इन 5 सालों में, राइट? तो पिछले जितने भी सालों में 22, लेटर सपोज आपने 2025 में उसे ट्रांसफर कर दिया, सो जो 22 में आपने बेनिफिट अवेल करा वो आपको 25 में रिवर्स करना पड़ेगा, जिस साल भी आपने ये बॉन्ड जो है ट्रांसफर करे. That is what is called revocation. You are supposed to reverse the benefit, whatever benefits you have taken under whatever section applicable. So that is what we mean by revocation, that it may be revoked for the previous years, right? Next section is our section 54F, right? Again, this section is available for both the individuals and Hindu undivided family. Now, here we are not limiting to any long term asset. We are not saying that it has specifically be a land and building, it has specifically be a agricultural land or an industrial undertaking. Now we are giving an open space to the the individuals or the Hindu undivided family. Here we are talking about, we are saying you sell out any long term asset, whatever capital asset it is, right? You sell out any one, right? And after selling out that particular asset, you are doing what? You are utilizing your amount in buying the another house property. So you sell out anything, you sell out any, let's say, jewelry, you sell out any, you could say any, debentures, or you sell out anything, any, let's say, land and building, anything it be. But after selling out that, whatever capital asset we are defining out here, but that capital asset has to be a long term one only, right? So after selling out that asset, you are doing what? You are buying a house property. The purchase, the very next purchase should be of house property only, right? And that too a residential house property, right? The rules remains the same. Either you can purchase the house property 1 year before the transfer, right? For example, you are transferring an asset, any long-term capital asset in 23, so you can make a purchase in 22 also. That would also classify as to be eligible one. Or you can, up to next 2 years, that means if you have sold out the property in 23, so up to 2025, you can, sort of buy another house property. So that is for the purchase. And when we are going for the construction, it says again, you have the time period of your 3 years from the date of transfer. So up till your these 3 years, you can go for any construction of a house property. Then also you will be eligible to claim the exemption available under section 54F. Now section 54 is slightly different, not just in terms of not focusing on to any specific asset, but also in terms on to your benefit or the amount of exemption that is available. It says what will be the amount of exemption that you will be getting. It says whatever investment that you make into the new asset, right, multiplied by the capital gain. So there is a formula. That formula says whatever investment you make into the new asset, it gets multiplied by the capital gains that you generate from the sale consideration, right, divided by the net sale consideration. So when we say net sale consideration, that means whatever being the full value of consideration, you deduct the expenses, whatever being levied on its transfer, let's say the litigation expenses, right? So whatever expenses you are incurring on to the transfer of the property or the capital asset, you have to deduce the same from the full value of consideration, then only you will get the net sale consideration. So you have to do what is, you have to multiply the capital gains with the investment into the new asset and divide the same by the net sale consideration. So whatever amount you are getting, that is the amount of exemption that you can claim under section 54F, right? Now again it says in case you are sort of transferring this new asset within 3 years from its date of acquisition or from its date of your construction, right, then the benefit will get revoked, right? So whatever amount you will be getting, those benefits will get revoked in case you are transferring the same within 3 years from date of acquisition or your you could say the transfer, right? So these were the different exemptions that were available under section 54. We'll be continuing the series with respect to another, you could say, few provisions in the next segment. So thank you.